Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephanie Wolf, and I am the Membership Relations Coordinator at Population Connection. It's wonderful to have you all here and to recognize so many familiar names in the chat. We truly appreciate your ongoing support, especially in these challenging times when so many fundamental human rights are under attack. Today's event, March Madness Opposing Trump 2.0, is hosted by Population Connection Action Fund. On the call presenting, we have our Senior Director of Advocacy and Outreach, Rebecca Harrington. Rebecca manages the Grassroots Field Program, including the Fight for Her campaign. Also joining us is Brian Dixon, Senior Vice President for Governmental and Political Affairs. He oversees the organization's advocacy and political work. If you have any questions for Rebecca or Brian, please drop them in the Q&A box found at the bottom of your screen, or use the raise hand function and we could take you off mute. We will do our very best to get the questions answered during the Q&A portion, which will be facilitated by our National Field Director, Lauren Salmieri. And then for any questions we don't have time to answer live, we will provide written responses along with a recording of this presentation and access to the chat box discussion. Now that's all the housekeeping items from me. I will send it over to Brian to get us started.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thank all of you for joining us. It's really great to be here with you, and just want to let you know how much we appreciate your interest and your support for our work in this admittedly challenging time. You know, it's hard to imagine, it's only been like 2 months since the Trump administration took office, and it's been chaos since day one, which I have to say, I think was part of their plan to throw out so much stuff so quickly, overwhelming people. But just on the first day, within hours of the inauguration, he had announced that the United States was withdrawing from the World Health Organization and from the Paris Climate Accords. And by the end of the first week, he had announced the reimposition of the global gag rule, which, as you know, has been a bane of global family planning programs for 4 decades. But he wasn't done, because soon thereafter, they announced that all foreign assistance, including all global health and family planning, was going to be frozen for a minimum of 90 days. They worked to shut down the whole agency administering these programs, the Agency for International Development. And just for an example of the damage that this freeze does, for every week that family planning funding is frozen or prevented from being used, almost 1 million people lose access to contraceptives and other care and supplies. If it's in effect for the full 90 days, which I think we can expect, and we're expecting them to try to keep it going even longer, just over 90 days, more than 11 million women would lose that access, and leading to 4.2 million unintended pregnancies and more than 8,000 maternal deaths. This week, we've learned of a new attack on the domestic family planning program, Title X, where they plan to freeze all of the Title X grants while they investigate the DEI policies of the healthcare providers that have been receiving them. And this is a massive governmental overreach into the policies of private organizations. If the government can condition federal support on having the right politics, the implications are immense. And the threat of what happens, Title X is already woefully underfunded, much like the international side. It can only provide services to about half the people who currently qualify. It's the primary, it's the only federal program dedicated to reproductive health and family planning for low-income Americans. And it threatens to undermine progress in efforts to reduce unintended pregnancy, to prevent and treat cancers, to prevent and treat STDs. It really has could do massive harm in a very short period of time. And I think that's sort of been the story for the last 2 months, is do as much harm as quickly as possible. I mean, we have a Secretary of Health who wants to make everybody sick. We have other federal people running other federal agencies who are committed to undoing all of the work they do. Just this week, we learned of, just massive incompetence in the national security team, for example, which, in a functional government, every single one of those people on that chat would be gone by the day this story broke. But none of them are gone yet. The only positive is that this does seem to have had some greater impact among members of the president's own party in Congress, who seem angry and shocked at how bad this was. And that could be, fingers crossed, sort of the beginning of a turning of the tide on how Congress is going to stand up to this administration. That, however, remains to be seen. But all we have is hope, so I'm going to keep that going. The congressional Democrats, especially on the reproductive health side, have been working and fighting as best they can. It's a challenge for them too, being in the minority in both the House and Senate, but we have seen legislative responses to a lot of this within days of Trump announcing the reimposition of the global gag rule. The Global Health Empowerment and Rights Act, the Global HER Act, which would permanently end that policy, was reintroduced in both the House and Senate by Lois Frankel, who's the ranking Democrat on the House Subcommittee on Foreign Assistance, and by Jeanne Shaheen in the Senate from New Hampshire, who's the ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and a key member of that Appropriations Committee. So that's been introduced. Just today, we expect Chrissy Houlihan from Pennsylvania to introduce a bill that would require the U.S. to restore funding to the United Nations Population Fund, which was part of this overall freeze of international aid. Angie Craig in the House and Ed Markey in the Senate have introduced the Right to Contraception Act, which would guarantee all Americans the right to use the contraceptive method that's best for them, and would ensure that healthcare providers have the right to dispense them as well, free of political interference from either federal or state authorities. So they're working to the degree they can. And I know a lot of people are frustrated with a lot of the Democratic response over the last 2 months. And I can't say I blame them for that frustration. But I do think, we're starting to see maybe some turnaround in that as well. We are we have some polling going out next week with that's going to look at how voters are reacting specifically to the Musk and Trump attacks on global family planning and global health in general, and whether we can and how to mobilize people across the country most effectively on those issues. So we look forward to being able to get out there and start turning some public support against them. We are continuing to work with our allies on the Hill to fight back everywhere we can, and we are continuing to work with candidates who are going to be running in the 26 elections to get people back into office who are going to be leaders in the fight to start quickly undoing all of the real harm they've done. And in the keeping hope alive theory, I think what we've seen in special elections that have happened this year is very promising. I mean, just earlier this week, a Democrat running for the Pennsylvania State Senate in a district that Trump won by 16 points, and in a district that no Democrat has ever won in that state. The Democrat flipped that seat. There are two special elections coming up in Florida for the U.S. House next week. In each of them, they're both strongly Republican districts, very much like the one in Pennsylvania that just flipped. Democrats in both of those races have massively outraised their Republican opponents. And if I were a Republican running in one of those seats, I would be very nervous about what's happening. And I think they are, because we also started seeing Republicans start turning on at least one of their candidates in Florida, and blaming them for being terrible, running a bad campaign, sort of what they do. And you'll hear more about this from Rebecca, but we'll be ramping up our grassroots fight for her campaign across the country in the coming months to start really getting on the ground, mobilizing people, bringing pressure to bear in key communities where to put pressure on elected officials to start using the power that they have and to reclaiming some of it. I will say, I think, it's the work that the Population Connection Action Fund is doing is essential. We're really the only ones bringing the international family planning fight to congressional districts nationwide, and bringing it to candidates and raising it in elections. And any additional support you can provide for that work would be incredibly important and incredibly valued, and we would be most grateful. It would allow us to really build up the work that needs to happen over the next year and a half or 2 years to make sure that when come January of 27, we're in a position to have the strength in Congress to really begin the work that's going to be necessary to restore all of the important work that this administration is undoing. With that, I will stop, and unless there are any specific questions that I can answer before I turn it over to Rebecca to talk more about the grassroots work.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, my pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for being here. It's nice to be in a space with everyone, and it's really encouraging to us that so many people, even though it's only been 2 months, it's been a long 2 months. So very encouraging to all of us on staff that so many of you are willing to take time out of your day to join us. So thank you for that. As Brian mentioned in detail, there's really not much of anything we can do on our foreign aid priorities right now, because there's no foreign aid flowing. The U.S. Agency for International Development, as I'm sure you've all been following, has been dismantled essentially. And, while of course we're staying plugged in and, asking people to contact their legislators on the Global HER Act and on the UNFPA bill that will drop later today, we've largely pivoted our efforts to supporting Trump 2.0 opposition work. So supporting, other choice groups, pro-democracy groups, LGBTQ plus groups who are doing work, having rallies, circulating petitions, sharing social media graphics and posts to really speak out and against all of the horrible damage that this administration is inflicting on most communities, to be honest, but obviously, specifically targeting LGBTQ plus folks, trans folks, immigrants, and they're seeking to harm, it seems like intentionally looking to harm children and older folks and take away social safety net programs. So pretty much anything that's reasonably connected to our work at Population Connection Action Fund, we're signing our name onto. We're trying to turn people out for rallies and marches. Some of the things we've been involved with already this year, when everything was first starting with the dismantling of USAID, We circulated a petition to our email list. We asked people to share information on social media. We've continued, we did a little series that our colleague put together that was really nice called Voices from Kenya, in which we shared, the real life impact of, USAID cuts and stop work orders on several organizations in East Africa. We're trying to continue, to keep up the drumbeat on social media of, the real lives and the real people that are impacted when we stop all of our foreign assistance and shut down, the premier foreign aid agency in the world. We turned out and recruited people to go to a rally in support of USAID a couple of months back. We've sent out several messages asking people to call their senators and oppose cabinet nominees. In particular, we were focusing on opposing RFK Jr., Pam Bondi, Dave Weldon for CDC, his nomination was pulled right before his hearing, and a couple of other folks. Obviously, most of those people have still gone on to be confirmed, but we thought it was important that people were calling up their elected officials, their senators, and letting them know that, under no circumstances did they want these people in office leading our health agencies and our Justice Department, etc. I believe last week was the March congressional recess. So we sent messages to our lists and our supporters asking them to attend town halls, primarily of Republicans, but also of Democrats in their home states. Really asking people to hold their elected officials to account, and turning up in big numbers to show people that you're opposing all of these terrible policies and actions that the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress are taking. We participated a couple of weeks ago in a march for healthcare sponsored by a democracy group here in town, that a number of champions spoke at. People are pretty angry. For those of you who have not been out into in-person events, people are angry at Republicans, of course, but they're also angry at Democrats. They're really using their voices, which is good, and really seem ripe and interested and wanting to know what they can do to fight back, and to stand up in opposition to the Trump administration and to Donald Trump and to Elon Musk. One thing that we're putting together that will be launching soon is a reproductive rights rundown, which will be probably a bi-weekly newsletter type thing in which we'll send out some information about what's happening domestically with reproductive rights. So there'll be a lot of information on abortion bans that are taking shape or that have been proposed, as well as any challenges to or bans proposed against contraception or anything related to reproductive health. We'll also plan to throw in updates as they happen on the global side, what's happening with USAID, what's happening with foreign assistance. So if you're interested in that, make sure to sign our Global Her petition, which I believe Lauren will drop in the chat. And we'll make sure that we get you on the list for that newsletter. I wanted to share, I know people are tired of being told this is what's happening and it's terrible. So we wanted to share a couple of things that you can do today. You could even do on this call. The first one Lauren has just dropped. It'll kind of serve as a twofer. You can click on this link and it will let you email your senators and representatives asking them to support the Global Health Empowerment and Rights Act, which is the bill Brian mentioned that would permanently repeal the global gag rule. That'll also get you on the list to get updates about what we have going on in the field and what actions we're taking. Next week, we will be hitting the streets for 2 events. We are joining some colleagues at the Christopher Street Project and a couple of other LGBTQ+ organizations for a Trans Day of Visibility rally on the National Mall here in DC. So Lauren has dropped the link to sign up for that. If you'd like to come march and rally with our staff, we'd love to have you. We'll wear t-shirts, we'll have signs. If you sign the form, we'll send you an email in advance letting you know where you can meet us. If you want to come with a group, if you don't want to do it and you just want to go on your own with your friends in your own community, that's totally fine and encouraged too. So that's next Monday, the 31st, which is also recognized federally as the Trans Day of Visibility. So an important day right now, and always, but especially given all the attacks on that community. And then next Wednesday, April 2nd, we will be joining Planned Parenthood and several other groups for a rally to protect Planned Parenthood and reproductive rights, funding for reproductive rights at the Supreme Court. On that day, there'll be oral arguments for a case called Medina versus Planned Parenthood of the South Atlantic. And that is a case in which Planned Parenthood will be challenging the state of South Carolina's attempt to block Planned Parenthood as a Medicaid provider in the state, which, you know, our side is hoping the court will find that that violates Medicaid recipients' freedom of choice to choose their provider. It's also, you know, yet another attack, not so thinly veiled attack on defunding Planned Parenthood and, you know, making sure that people can't get, you know, the care that they need and deserve and want. So join us for that if you'd like. We'll be loud, we'll be wearing shirts again, we'll have swag we can give out, we'll give you signs. So feel free to sign up there. That link is also in the chat. And then, you know, sort of going forward, as we see this year, over the next couple of months, certainly, and it'll continue through this year, we'll continue in these opposition efforts. Unfortunately, there's a lot to oppose every day. It seems like something new is happening, if not multiple things each day to be outraged about. So again, sign up for our list by clicking on the Global Her Act form, and we'll keep you updated on what we're doing. Also, we'd love to hear from you. So if there's things you'd like to see us doing that we're not doing, feel free to reach out to me directly or to Lauren directly or to Brian directly. Or just let us know however, whatever mode you're most comfortable with. We're always open to new ideas. And if there's something you're doing in your community that seems like it's particularly effective, we would love to hear about it. As Brian also talked a little bit about, we are planning the next on the ground phase of our Fight for Her campaign, which has always broadly been about defending reproductive freedom around the world. So we are, for the rest of this year, we'll continue our opposition efforts, as well as lay the groundwork for, you know, in-person work that we'll be doing in 2026 in the lead up to the midterm elections, hoping to actually hit the ground later this year. And the goal of that campaign will be very, very similar to what it's been in the past, although obviously sort of shifting to accommodate the current landscape. But we'll be working to build power and ultimately in November of 2026 to elect pro-reproductive rights candidates in several key locations across the country. So, you know, jump on our list, sign this form. We'll keep you posted. We'll let you know what we're doing. Would love any and all support. Like I said, would love to hear from you if you have any ideas about any other efforts or actions we can be taking. And I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on a special election result that Brian mentioned when he was talking earlier, which is about the state Senate seat that was flipped in Pennsylvania earlier this week in a special election there. It was a seat in Lancaster County that, since it had been created 40 years ago, has always been held by a Republican. The seat has never once been held by a Democrat. And the mayor of, I had to write it down, East Petersburg, Pennsylvania, the mayor, James Andrew Malone, defeated the Republican candidate, Josh Parsons, 50-49. So, an unexpected victory for Democrats, but a great one, a close win. But again, flipping a seat that has always been Republican. So we know we're hitting you with a lot of hard stuff. So wanted to kind of end on an uplifting note about something really positive that's happening, and hopefully some foreshadowing for what's to come in upcoming special elections, and then of course in the midterm elections next year. So thanks again for being with us. Brian and I would be more than happy to answer any questions, or try our best to answer any questions y'all have.
Thanks, Rebecca. We are going to open up now for Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A function that's at the bottom of your screen. Or you can raise your hand, which I believe is on the React menu. So if you click the heart that says React, it should be an option to raise your hand. Brian, I'm first going to ask you one of the pre-submitted questions, which is there any way to locate and support brave Republicans for office?
Well, as I read that question, and my first response was, I think you'd need to start by using the Hubble Space Telescope to search the far reaches of the universe, because they're very hard to find here on this planet. I think the ones that were there in the past are both gone. Since there were only two, it was Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, both now out of Congress. I have not seen any evidence that there are any others yet. One of the things that I think is more important is not to ask them to be brave, but to make them more scared of their constituents than they are of the guy in the White House. Make them more scared to cut all these programs, to strip people of their rights and freedoms. That's what's going to motivate them to act. And that's why winning these elections is so crucial. It's kind of sending a message to the Republic. If they can't win a seat that Trump carried by 16 points, they better start thinking about what's happening in this country if they want to keep their seats. So rather than looking for brave ones, let's make them more scared. So that's that's part of the work we're trying to do by mobilizing public support in key districts across the country that of people who care about these issues and are willing to act on it.
We'll keep looking for them. Okay, I'm gonna take a question from Michael from the Q&A box. Michael says, as the founder of an organization dedicated to gender equality in Africa, particularly Liberia, I'm facing challenges in helping women and girls achieve sustainable development. With the recent cuts and suspension of US global aid, particularly in Africa, what measures have been implemented to support countries that depend on US aid?
Brian, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, although I don't really have an answer, because the US investment in these programs has been so crucial for so long, and because the US ability and capacity to invest is so much greater than any other country, it's hard to see how that gap gets filled. And that's why we're so committed to fighting to restore the US support. I know organizations like the one you lead are facing these challenges all over, and we have partner organizations around the world, and in Latin America and Africa and parts of Asia that are having to deal with the impacts of this cut themselves, and I could give you sympathy and empathy. I don't have an answer for how to fix it without fixing it. But if you have ideas that I haven't thought of, I mean, I am certainly open to hearing them and you know, kicking them up to the people on Capitol Hill that I talk to, if there's any way they can do it.
Yeah, and this is definitely something as we ramp up the fight for her, that we are keeping in mind and a problem we're hoping to solve. The next question is from John. And John is asking an admittedly biased question as a lifelong centrist and independent voter. Are we reaching out sufficiently to his fellow independents? I would like to see less partisanship from Planned Parenthood, which I think would also give us a better shot at appealing to Republicans.
I can start with that one too. When I first started doing this work, there were, you know, between 40 and 50 Republicans in the House who were committed supporters of these programs. And there was a strong number in the Senate as well. People like, you know, Republicans like Nancy Kassebaum and Alan Simpson, who sadly just passed away. You know, and Mark, you know, Senator Packwood and Hatfield from Oregon. I'm not sure that it's fair to say that, you know, groups like Planned Parenthood became partisan. I think the issue became polarized long before the groups did. And so I think, you know, we support the candidates who support the programs and the work and the key investments that are helping to solve these problems. And if we could find a Republican, and we do work with people like Susan Collins and the only other elected Republican in the Congress, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, the 60 or so that were there not all that long ago has dwindled to 2. And we work with them on a regular basis as well. I mean, if we could find the Republicans that support these programs, we would be happy to work with them. We would love for this to not be such a partisan issue. It's shocking to me that it is. The idea that contraception and family planning and the right of people to make their own choices has become a political issue is, frankly, you know, infuriating. And it doesn't need to be this way. You know, the elder George Bush, when he was in Congress, was a huge supporter of these. But by the time he was president, he had switched. So I think we are looking to build up candidates, regardless of party, who are there with us on these issues. And sadly, at this point, the only ones that have been for the last several years are Democrats.
And just to tack on, if I can, to everything Brian said, which I totally echo all of that. We in terms of the work we're doing, we would love to have you, and we would love to have people like you. And we'll be hoping in our efforts in the field, and particularly as we get into canvassing right before the midterms, we'll be really hoping to connect with independents and with people who are not Democrats per se, but who believe in the importance of these issues. So you're definitely welcome, and we encourage you to join in with whatever we're doing. I also sorry, Lauren, I'm just popping in to say that Stephanie's going to be launching a poll. So if you could all continue asking your great questions, but just respond to the poll, that would be great. Thank you.
We'll take a momentary pause just so folks have a little bit of quiet to read the poll and then select their responses. Okay, I'm going to continue with the next question from Stan. It is definitely a tough one, but I'll open it up, Brian and Rebecca, to you both. In France, the farmers had a tractor strike that blocked roads into Paris and perhaps elsewhere, which got the attention of everyone and led to dialogue with the government. Drastic overreach of Trump deserves drastic nonviolent measures of resistance. What would make sense in this vein in or around DC?
That is a really excellent question. Another area where we would welcome your creative ideas. I don't have the answer for that, I'll be honest. I do think, there have been a lot of rallies, protests, demonstrations that have popped up in the last couple of months. And given the anger we're seeing at these rallies and the sort of heckling, I don't want to say heckling, that sounds negative, the really outspoken way in which people are talking to elected officials of both parties. I think we're heading in a direction where there is going to be some sort of mass demonstration where people are going to be blocking roads and blocking buildings. And I think there's already conversations among, the organizers and the grassroots groups talking about what that would look like. I don't personally exactly know what that would look like, but I think if things continue the way they are for much longer, people are going to start revolting. But hopefully it will be in a nonviolent way and in a way that will, create a big statement and send a big message. But I think that that's coming soon, but exactly what that will look like, I'm not sure. I don't know if you have anything to add, Brian.
I don't. I think that's what I would have said too.
I'll also add, I think that the DC nonviolent measures of resistance certainly get a lot of press. And it's a central area for folks from around the country to gather. And so we tend to have larger numbers of people when we do those kinds of events in Washington, but they are just as loud when they happen in congressional districts and at the local level. I think about, I believe it was JD Vance on a ski trip in New Hampshire with his family shortly after he took office and how many people were in the streets. And that did get a lot of press. And so I think it's certainly something we're thinking about as we move forward and working with local folks in communities to do these rallies and protests and kind of visibility events. But if you see things in your area that are happening, I do encourage you to attend because they can work really well to make your voices heard with your elected officials, both at the state and the federal level. Brian?
I will add something now because that spurred a thought. But Republicans in Congress have been working very hard over the last 2 months to avoid meeting with and talking to their constituents when they're home. I think it's well worth people's efforts to gather a group of allies, go to their district offices every day if needed, and ask for meetings and ask to be heard. And the longer they keep denying you, that bring a reporter from the local outlets, TV outlets, print outlets, local radio stations, bring them along with you to the meetings and make them say no if they're going to say no. Don't just let them hide. I think that's an incredibly useful option as well.
Okay, great. The next question I'm going to ask is a bit forward thinking as we continue in the shenanigans that we're experiencing right now. So what are some of the other districts that we could or should be looking at for special elections that are coming up? I know you mentioned Pennsylvania and Florida, and then are we looking at the midterm elections at this point? And if so, are we focused anywhere yet?
You want to go first?
No.
You're muted.
You can go first.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're still sort of deciding exactly where we'll be on the ground for our Fight for Her campaign. Some places we're looking at being are in the Las Vegas area of Nevada. There's a couple of congressional districts there that are quite important. We want to keep the incumbents in those seats. They play important roles on appropriations committees and are good champions of our issues. We're looking to potentially be in Tucson, Arizona, which encompasses the 6th congressional district, which was a very, the race for that seat was very close in this past election. It's currently the Republican ended up winning, but it was a very close race. You know, we've done a lot of work in New Hampshire, which has been an important state, important sort of political state forever, and are looking to, there's a couple of Senate races there next year. We want to keep good champions in those seats. We're looking into going to potentially North Carolina. There's a Senate seat potentially up, and a potential retirement coming from the other Republican senator. And then, you know, looking at some other areas, potentially Maine, you know, places, we're looking at places where important Senate seats are up that we either want to hang on to or try to flip, as well as a couple of congressional districts like the 6th in Arizona. I'm sure Brian has a lot more to add to that.
I don't have a lot more to add to that, but I do think it's, I think Rebecca covered it pretty well. But I think, you know, the 6th district in Arizona is important because, you know, the Republican Juan Ciscomani ran as sort of a moderate. He's on the Appropriations Committee. I think if we can generate the kind of public support for these kinds of programs, for investments in international family planning, for protecting the rights of all people to use the birth control that's best for them. If we could build that kind of network and mobilize people there, that's the kind of pressure that might help a guy like Juan Ciscomani do what he probably wants to do anyway, but feels too scared of, you know, his party leadership to do. So that's, I think, helpful. That we're looking to bring pressure both on policy and also politics. So that's how we're looking at places where we can do both.
And to tack on another question to that, who are some of the reproductive rights champions who we're working with right now, who we can count on to be vocal on these issues?
Well, in the House, there's, you know, we have, you know, Lois Frankel from Florida and Susie Lee from Nevada. And I mean, there's a lot of them in the House. I'd be to sort of hesitate to start naming them because I know I'm going to forget some and I'm going to get in trouble for leaving somebody out. In the Senate, you know, we rely on Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, the 2 Republican senators that have been longtime supporters of these priorities, but also, you know, Senator Jean Shaheen from New Hampshire, and Chris Murphy from Connecticut, and Brian Schatz from Hawaii, and Tammy Duckworth from Illinois, and again, there's several, that Cory Booker from New Jersey, who are, you know, leaders of important legislation that addresses these issues both at home and abroad. So we are, you know, we're willing to work with anyone who's willing to work with us. And so, you know, there are champions that we've relied on for a long time, and we're always looking to develop new ones.
Thank you. And then I think this continues the thread of the last few questions, but for folks who are not based in DC or who aren't as mobile to go out in person and attend rallies and events or even meet with their members of Congress in real life, face to face, what are one or two of the top actions that you'd suggest that they take in order to have their voice heard?
I think you can, always call the DC office or the district office of your senators and congresspeople. You can call them about a specific bill or a specific budget thing that's happening, but you can also just call and share your opinion. They work for you. So if you're displeased with what they're doing, you can call and you can let them know. And you can call every day. There's people I know who it's like every morning with their coffee, they call their senators and their representative and they just let them know what they're thinking every day. And that stuff, some people will say that doesn't matter, but it really does matter. I think there was something, Brian, correct me, I'm going to get this number wrong, but I think this year there's been like some crazy percentage increase in the number of calls being received on the congressional switchboard. I want to say it's like a 3,000% increase, but I might just be, being wildly optimistic, but some sort of like crazy, like voicemail boxes are overflowing, like lines are going down. So I think that that's really valuable. Either when something specific is happening or just to voice your displeasure. Also, if your elected official is doing something right, it's really hard to like be a person with a spine and a person with conviction right now. So if you want to call them and say like, good job, they're people like us. They like to be told like when they do things right. Because usually they're told what they're doing wrong, which is great too. So you can call. I think, thinking about Brian's suggestion about, for those people who are able to go to do in-person meetings with their elected officials and like bringing a reporter along, following the news, submitting letters to the editor to your local paper, maybe if you're a writer and you're particularly passionate about an issue, submitting an op-ed to your local paper. Things like that matter. And then if you get published, you can share it on social media, you can share it with your friends, you can, do whatever to spread the word. I think in addition to the things we've talked about, those are the things I would say, but Brian and Lauren might have more to add.
The only thing I would add is on the op-ed piece, I know we had some conversation about, reproductive health and rights and healthcare access should not be a partisan issue. And so an op-ed is a perfect example of how to tell your community and share your opinion with your community as to why it shouldn't be. And if you find an opportunity there to use that as an outlet to share about how this is an issue of healthcare and decision-making between a patient and their healthcare provider, I think an op-ed or your local newspaper is an excellent place to do that and reach the people who you're going to be voting alongside in whatever election comes next for you. Okay, I think that captures everything. I did see that Stephanie just popped in the chat an earned media guide for submitting letters to the editor or op-eds. So if that piques your interest and you're curious about it, I do encourage you to take a look at that. And you can always reach out to our team and we can help you with that process or help you think of ideas. Please do let us know. We're here as a resource for you. So I think Stephanie or Brian, over to you.
Yeah, it looks like we're at the hour. I don't know if there was a final question that was sent your way that you want to present. Okay, so we are about wrapping up. As I mentioned earlier, the recording of this presentation will be shared with you all, along with Brian's email, Rebecca's email, and Lauren's email. If you'd like to get in touch and connect, share your ideas, we would really love to hear them. And I will be in touch soon. Thank you again all for joining us in this very uncertain time. Like Brian said, that hope is what we can hold on to, and it's great that we're all gathered here today fighting and trying to get through this time. I also want to share the Action Fund donate form again, because we truly cannot do this work without our incredible supporters. We are completely member-based, so your support goes a long way, and we truly need it right now. So let me go ahead and drop that in the chat before we hop off. And Rebecca or Brian, I don't know if you want to say any last thanks before we go.
Yeah, I do just want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. We are so grateful for your support and your interest and your willingness to take the time and talk with us about this. And again, if you have thoughts that you'd like to share, please do reach out and get in touch. We're always open to hearing ideas we haven't thought of.
Yeah, and I just echo that, and also just wanted to say that I think there's a lot to despair about right now. And it's, I think, sometimes easier to put all of your energy into despairing or to being hopeful. But I really think, you know, and this is as much a challenge for me as for anyone, but it's really important right now to find space in your life to kind of hold both things, and to recognize that there's a lot of horrible stuff happening, but to maintain hope that there's, you know, good leaders and good organizations and good activists like all of you standing up and trying to do the right thing and calling their senators and going to rallies. So if you can find space for both of those huge and hard emotions, I think that's sort of will help us get by right now. And also take care of yourself and do things that bring you joy and make you happy, and take away some of the horribleness of what's happening right now.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will be in touch soon. Thanks again.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.